Hey everyone, I'm Jim T. Graham with RCGroups.com, and today we're here with an RC. What would I call you, Mike? Mike's been doing RC reviews for RC Groups 4, and historically on the spot. How long do you think you've been doing reviews?
I think my first one was in 2006.
So that
That was when I signed up, and I think that was the old Twin Star review. So yeah,
Twin Star, and who was
yeah,
it? Who made the Twin Star? That wasn't a Hobby Lobby
that was
plane,
a
was it?
no, that was a
Twin Star, Hobby
tower
Car.
hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a tower, I believe, and they were all gas at that time, glow powered. So it was made for like 25 sized if you were really wanting to go and get it, 15, 19 sized. Glow engines. And so when I did the review, there were actually two other Twin Stars in the club. One of them, and both of them glow powered, but one of them was powered by twin 25s, and one was powered by twin 40 LAs. So we had a good comparison. That thing, and the electric really performed well and kept up with them. The twin 40, as you could imagine, on the little teeny tanks they had in the nacelles, would only go for about 3 minutes if you could get both
Right.
engines started, and both engines would keep running. But that's where the beauty of the electric came through. And even back then, it was just difficult to get bits and pieces and parts and all the stuff to make it work back then.
And so I discuss Mike's history in RC because today we're going to talk about RC demographics. Who's really at the airfield? Who's really flying planes based on Mike's experience over all these years? And if you've ever looked at a review on RC Groups, you probably have seen some of Mike's work. So you've built just about everything, right?
Pretty close. Well, King's Flyer is the handle I've got there on RC Groups. So go look for King's Flyer on rcgroups.com and look for the reviews, and there'll be a link there that you can look at all the reviews if you've got a lot of time. You can peruse through all that old stuff. But yeah, when let's see, the other day I was trying to figure out when did I really start in RC, and 1955 was the year I took
Wow.
my first RC airplane flight. The controls, my dad handed me a push button. It was a single channel, pushed it once for right, twice for left. I'm 6 years old, and I didn't really understand that very well. I understood that I could push the button and hold it, but then the plane kind of went in a spin. He would yank the control out of my hand, go through the explanation again, one right, two left, let it go, fly it, and mixed results. But that was actually my first RC flight. So vacuum tube receivers, home built by ham radio operators, high wing. I think it had a torpedo 15, that just ran
Yep.
until the fuel ran out. Uh, so that was a really neat beginning. But then when it had to come to the point where I had to buy my stuff, there was a little difference. I could afford baby B's and control line. So all through elementary school and starting into high school, it was all U control stuff. Ringmasters, Voodoos, 35s. When I really got some spending money, I got a Fox 36X, so I could really go fast, run it on crankcase pressure. But then finally RC, and I got my first RC plane, was kind of a little Cessna 150 looking thing, foam wings, and I built it up for the radio, but I didn't have the radio yet, so I decided, well, I'll just try it kind of as a free flight. I'll just fuel it up and see how it flies, because I don't even know if this thing's going to fly. Well,
Right.
you know what's going to happen. I filled the tank all the way up, and of course it flew wonderful, caught a thermal, and it's probably still going to this day.
I'll tell you a story. L.A. Johnson from Hobby Lobby had an airplane that was full of fuel and left and never came back. And an hour later, he went to a movie with his wife. And when he came home, he had a message on his machine. That airplane had landed in a field next to a guy in a tractor plowing his field. And
Wow.
he walked over and picked it up. And L.A. drove an hour to get the plane. It flew an hour away from his field, and brought it home and flew it again. So that's how far away they can
Wow.
go.
Well, that's also a good, lesson about be sure you put your name, your AMA number, your contact information in your airplanes, because it is important. I wish I'd put mine in that airplane that day.
Right. You'd have a
Dad
better
always had
story there at the
his.
end.
Yeah, Dad always had his name in his because they would the radio control was kind of intermittent at best, and it kind of would fly off. And yeah, most of the time he got it back because he had reward printed at the bottom, and most of the
All
kids
right.
that found it would then call him back.
How much was the reward?
It depended on the group, but sometimes there was one particular time that I remember he had to go into a neighborhood full of kids that supposedly found the airplane, and they were kind of holding it for ransom, and I think he got
Sure.
up to about $10 was the reward that he finally had
Nice.
to part with. But so yeah, that happens. So anyway, after all that, I finally did get some RC gear, and I bought my first used RC equipment, which was a reed set. So transmite servos, reeds. I don't know how many people know about reeds anymore, but that's pretty old technology. But I could fly it, and it flew, and I put it in a Falcon 56. So really nice flying little airplane. I think it had an ENIA 35 in it. So that was my beginning, but it sure was difficult to fly. So I got into proportional radio. Of course, it's all old analog stuff. But I finally worked an entire summer to save enough money to buy a used Kraft gold medal 4-channel radio. And it was a single stick. So my first experience with radios was single sticks.
Which
I
is
still have
fine.
that radio, as a matter of fact, but the interesting story on that is it's in 27 megacycles. I mean, that was pretty common back then. You were in the CB band, you got a CB license to operate your
Oh,
transmitter, and it was on 27-195, the green flag. And the cutesy thing about that was it was exactly between channel 19 and 20 on the CB band. So if you remember the Good Buddy
yeah,
craze from way
man,
back
that's the
when,
most active channel on the CB radio. So people could shoot
absolutely.
you down if they wanted to, eh?
Well, and a lot of them were running what they would call a hot foot, 1,000-watt linear amplifier on channel 19, so they could be, heard halfway across the United States. Uh, but I really never had a minute's trouble with that radio, and then
Huh.
I got in trouble. The only time I got in trouble with the radio was showing off, because they had these long antennas because it was still 27 megacycles, so they're probably pretty close to a meter long. And I was flying it up high, and I had a little stick, low wing conversion, so 15 powered. It was way up in the air, beautiful little airplane. And I was trying to show off just how good my range was, and that 27 megacycles, channel 19 didn't bother me. And I'm in the middle of San Antonio in our airfield flying this thing. So I take the flat of my hand and push down on the antenna to collapse it. I'm flying that single stick, not a minute's trouble. Well, I went to put the antenna back up, and as I did, I bumped the single stick with my hand going up, and the plane goes whoop and starts heading straight down. Well, it's way the heck up there, no problem. Except that when I went to pull the antenna out, it had one of those little balls on the top, and it slipped down inside the ferrule of the next section. And I'm in there with my fingertips trying to pull this thing out, and I finally was able to get several sections out and give it up elevator and, pull the plane out at about 5 feet of altitude. So racing
That's
stripes in the shorts, and don't ever do that again. No
was
more
anyone
showing
there to
off.
see it?
Absolutely. Well, half of the club. Yeah, that's why I was
Yeah.
showing off. Lessons learned.
So
So,
the first
gold medals.
the first crash I had in a field, I was very upset about it. And the guy with me walking out to pick up the remains said, "Jim, why do you think everybody comes out here? They want to see you crash." It took the
Kind of
pressure
like
right
stock
off of
car racing, right?
Right.
Everybody comes to see the crash.
Well,
So, that's kind of part of the process, I guess, of getting these planes and learning how to fly them. And yeah, we broke a lot of them, but there were two of us junior members in the club at that time. So this is 60s, mid 60s, late 60s, two junior members in the club. We were sitting like vultures on the benches while just waiting for something to crash, because we couldn't afford the airplanes and the parts.
got
As
it.
soon as they started putting the planes in the trash can, it was all fair game. Are you going to keep those quick links? Do you want that hinge that's on that? Can I have this aileron, this broken strip aileron? Oh, that motor mount. Are you going to keep that motor mount? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's what started this hobby. A lot of scrounging. Now, my little teeny parts drawers probably still have remnants of old quick links in them that were
Right.
salvaged in the 60s off of crashed airplanes.
I did the same thing when I started. I finally took all the little planes that I had picked up at the field and put them back on the picnic table out there one day to see if anyone else had use for them, you know. And these were, man, they're probably antiques now, the planes that I had picked up from
Oh
old
yeah.
timers.
Well, quick flies and chaoses and well, Cherokees. I mean, a lot of the old Cherokee was one of the mainstays back then, the 60 size. And that kind of led me to one of my favorite airplanes was the little Cherokee Babe. Remember the 40 size Cherokee? It was really a nice size. Of course, it had tricycle gear and of course the Cherokee look, the profile of it. I think it was VK models. Maybe that's who made those.
And what kind of motor did you run on that thing?
Oh, that one normally a 40 K and B because
Can be.
it was a really short nose and you had to use a mounting plate they included with the kit where you took the four screws that held the backing plate of the motor out and you put longer screws into this aluminum plate that were recessed and then you mounted that plate on the firewall. So there was no motor mount involved except that flat plate. So it mounted really close to the firewall. And with that KMB 40, that thing would really go. Here today, hanging on my shelf over here is a Cherokee Babe. That was, as I got into ARFs and everything else, I promised myself that if I was ever going to build another kit, the only one that was worth building would be the Cherokee Babe. And it was kind of one of those with a lot of sticks you glued together and you cut everything away until it looked like an airplane. So it took a lot of sanding and a lot of carving to get your airplane out of the kit. But so that was my premise. And a friend of mine in Kansas had one that he had converted unsuccessfully to electric. I bought it from him. I brought it home. I changed the prop. I changed the motor to 4K to run on 4S. It flies wonderful. So I've sold the kit. I'm not ever going to build another Cherokee Babe kit. I'm going to keep this one, and I still fly it.
Well, let me say this, everyone. We have Mike. He will be joining us hopefully regularly throughout the coming year, talking about stories. And I know all those old radios are back there. We'll take a little tour of historic transmitters. But what we were talking about this morning was who actually is at the airfield these days. And Mike started talking, and I said, we should do a YouTube video on this. And here we are. So, Mike, I'm just going to hand it over.
Well, it's interesting. Today, with the way the hobby market is, all the marketing is occurring online, basically. A lot of it is on YouTube. A lot of it is being done by influencers. And those people do a good job, okay? I have done reviews. I know how many hours it takes to get good video and to get it all spliced together and to make a decent presentation out of it. I know how difficult it is for videographers to do that kind of work, but I don't know that the people my age or maybe a little younger, because as my youngest son keeps telling me, Dad, you're almost 3/4 of a century old, which doesn't help his stature in my eyes any. Now that he's getting closer, he's over a 1/4 century, but getting closer to the half century mark himself. So anyway, but folks that look like me may not always feel comfortable going into YouTube, or they may not spend their time watching YouTube videos. They may not be subscribed to those YouTube channels. They may not be getting feeds or notifications when a new video comes out. They may just be going to the site, the manufacturer sites, and looking there, and occasionally something will come up on a video and they'll look at it and watch it. But so I'm not sure that the marketing that's occurring is really the best for some of us longer in the tooth type modelers. And as I look around my club, we're up here, Central Texas area. We're on the Highland Lakes on Lake LBJ. A little bitty town called Kingsland, but we pull modelers from all the areas around here. We're kind of 90 miles west of Austin and probably 90 miles north of San Antonio. That's kind of where we are geographically. And we pull modelers from probably as much as 50 miles around here. They come in because our field is a really nice flying field. It should appear in an article on the AMA group pretty soon in the magazine. It's kind of a success story. We can talk about that some other time, but it's a old county dump where the refuse used to be stacked and stored, and they had to close it. They had to cap it. They can't do anything with it for 30 years. We leased it, covered it with Petromat, and that's where we fly off of. So, that club our club has really grown. There's a lot of folks coming in. We get new members all the time. Unfortunately, the demographics of the club, we've got like 2 or 3 members that I would say are less than 20 years old. We got some twin boys that are about 14 or 15, and that's about the extent of the younger members. The next youngest members are probably mid to late 30s, mid 40s. The majority, I'd say over half of the club is probably 60 years old or older. So either they've been in the business a long time and they're coming back to RC, or they've never been in RC. They're retiring. They're coming up. They've got disposable income. They want to learn how to fly. They have some interest in aviation. Either they were flying general sport aviation, general aviation, or just love airplanes. And now they want to fly RC. And so they come to the club, and we get them started. But they're my age. Well, maybe not quite my age, but close.
So you're saying they're probably not on TikTok.
They're probably not looking at TikTok. They're probably not looking at Instagram. They're probably not looking at any of that. But, they find us. They go through the AMA website. They look at the club. They find the club, or they hear about it. They see one of the articles in the newspapers of some of the events we've attended or done. And they come by, and then they want to learn about RC. So we try to make a good recommendation depending on what their background is. Usually something like an Aero Scout, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's
maybe
my
Aero
favorite.
Sport. That little high wing, it's got the rear prop. It's got a pusher engine on it. It has a really nice airfoil on the wing. It's got huge wheels, and it flies really well. And safe is just so good on it. So I'm the instructor, the club instructor, and they caught me this year, so club president. Anyway, so that there's only like one other guy that's an instructor, so we need more instructors to keep the new guys coming in, but that's a whole other story. But the demographics are older, but the guys are really wanting to learn, so they're doing good. We put them on the safe system. We put them on something that'll self-stabilize, and teach them how to do that, teach them how to fly with that. And then eventually they'll just use that to take off and maybe to land. And then eventually they don't even use that. So,
and I will say about the Aero Scout, after you get past learning to fly, it's a capable little airplane that you can fly in some wind, and you can go inverted and all kinds of stuff in that airplane.
I have guys that are, that are learning a lot from that little airplane, and they're not afraid to practice with it. I mean, they're not afraid to try something like inverted flight, or maybe I can do a roll, or maybe I can do a loop, or maybe I can try to fly inverted. The airplane will do it, and they have safe. They can switch safe in to get it back level again. So it's wonderful for that. And you're right, the aerobatics are surprising. They really are.
Tell us the story. I'm sorry.
So the one thing that I find with all the guys that are learning, they're kind of like I used to be. I mean, when I came back in the hobby, I had kids went to college, they finally left home, I didn't have to pay for college bills anymore, so I got back in the hobby about 05, I guess, in 2002 to 2005. I flew indoors. So I started flying indoor at a gymnasium size room, small electrics, but I found out how stupid my left hand was, because flying glow all those years, all you use your left hand for is to push the throttle forward.
Right.
And, you may use it to taxi out, and if you don't hit anything, then you'll push it forward and take off. But from that point on, it's all yank and bank. You use ailerons and elevator. And after you land, if you're lucky enough for the motor to still be running, then you can taxi back and use the left hand again. And unless you were going to do a stall turn or try to do a fancy snap, the left hand didn't do a whole lot during the whole flight. So trying to get the guys these days to learn on the front end about turning and coordinating rudder and
Keeping it
elevator,
flat.
rudder and
Right.
ailerons and elevator together to keep it flat, uh, is, it's important, and they do it, and it's amazing how well they fly. I mean, we've got some guys in the club that are really flying well. So, but that's, I never did that until way later.
You were the thing that really caught me when we were talking is you were saying, I've always said that you get it, you really are into RC when you can't afford it when you're young. Then you get into your car or going out with, socially doing things, and the hobby, you can't afford that and that. Then you have
Right.
kids. So really the re-entry to the hobby for most people is after their kids are older, which puts that demographic much higher. And then you said all your friends, did you go to a show and then all your buddies bought the same airplane?
Uh, no, no.
I think it
Uh,
was an extreme flight bird and they wound up
oh,
purchasing.
okay. So this was a group of fellows that I met over by College Station, that really nice place west of Austin that has a really good football team. Kind
That's
of
where my
ignore the
dad
guys
went to
in
school.
Austin.
Yeah.
Anyway, so over on the Brazos River, the club over there, which is the only one in that whole area, the guys look just like me, and they all went to Apache Pass. They've got big events over at Apache Pass, and they all bought the same airplane. Like they sold like six of them to these guys, and these airplanes are not cheap. They're probably, with batteries and everything, $800, $900. So they sold like six of them to those guys. So how did, other than word of mouth or seeing it flying at this event, how would those guys ever have bought that airplane other than that exposure? I mean, they wouldn't have done it online. They certainly wouldn't have got that many of them, but they all got them. They all brought them back to the field. They all had identical models. And the airplane they bought, I had one of those, but only because I'd done a review on it. And it was a
Well,
wonderful airplane.
let's go there. When you say where else would they find out about it? The
Yeah.
thing that kind of gets me is someone who's marketed for over, I don't know, 18 years just for the hobby, is I'm seeing this trend of whatever the product is. Let's say this is the product. The video is this, and then that's all you get, and the video's over. Whereas a review that you would do, you would show the build, what's in the box, electronics, CG, setup, first flight, extensive, you know.
Well, and it's the other thing I think that's more important about the print type review, or the review that would be on RC groups, is the availability for reference in the future. Because the ones that are done by video now, the ones from the influencers, if you want to see, well, what was it about that elevator that the guy said to hook up in the build process? Well, it was one of four videos on that airplane, but it was it his first view or was it his second? So here's five videos, and they're 30 minutes to an hour long, and I'm going to try and find that specific point in there about it. Whereas in a written review, you look down there and you're going in the build and you find up the elevator, elevator and rudder hookup, and there it is. And you can look it up 5 years from now. You can look it up
Right.
10 years from now, because it's going to be there.
So let me
So I
say
think
with
that's
that,
the big value, and it's
right.
amazing. Yeah.
I was going to say
So
I
it's
have done.
amazing that I still get comments.
You go ahead. I'm sorry.
There must be a lag. Anyway, get I still get comments on the Twin Star review. So I still get comments on reviews of planes I did 5 or 10 years ago. And I'll go through my pictures that I took. I'll try and send them notes or try and give them references as to what it was that I did. So I'm a resource that's available, as well as the review itself. So I don't know that you can get that through the present day media marketing.
And I'm going to get on a little soapbox here. Um, I get emails sometimes, I want to do something in the market that's newer or sexier, or, and I will go upstairs and talk to my wife and say, forums are as valid and probably more valid than they were 10 years ago, because we're the last bastion of information that you can actually access using a search engine. So I have built planes for reviews, gone to the field years later. What's the CG? I have no idea. Look up my own review on RC groups, find the
Yeah,
CG, set it while I'm standing there looking at my phone on the grass, and go fly my airplane. And that's impossible with all these other iterations of promotion, you know?
absolutely. It's just a wealth of knowledge, and I don't know how you would get that in any other format, uh, or how you would even find it. So, as a the closest analogy I can think is on like Facebook groups where some people will list maybe that airplane, or you could maybe search that, but you're going to get like 3 comments or 10 comments or nothing as your reply, and none of it will be as good as what's in the review because
Right.
that's the information you really needed.
Well, for me, whenever I look up anything anymore in a search engine, I put forum after my question so that I can get not only good answers, but answers from people like me, whatever the
Mm.
topic is. And I'm like, if I'm using forum as a search term because I can't wade through all the trash at the top, and by trash, I mean add for a whole page, and I never get what I'm
Right.
looking for, um, then I'm like, this really tells me that a forum is super important these days.
Absolutely. And the way they're broken down on our C groups, it just makes so much sense. And I often, all the guys in the club, the new ones that come in, I'll always send them to the beginner area, the trainer area, the forums. And if they've got a question about one of the planes they've got, that's where they'll go. Send them, well, there's a forum there. There's a group for that. Just sign on to RC groups and look. So yeah, it's such a resource.
Yeah, and one term I use, and I know it sounds like we're now just promoting RC groups, but I think about this a lot. So we are talking about RC groups, but I'm also talking about the concept in general. If you post this in other social areas, I call it evaporative content. You put your hard work. Here's everything I did. Here's an explanation. Blah blah blah. And then after that day, it just evaporates. Your content means nothing to anyone a day from then. Where on RC groups, we have content that is 10 years old, still being accessed. And the flip side of that, I had an advertiser on the phone and he said, Jim, does anyone really interact in a forum anymore? I made a post, I think in October or November. It had 40,000 views on it. And that was like a month ago. So, yeah, we have threads on there with 180,000 views. Horizon threads are always remarkably popular. If you go look at any Horizon thread, it's nuts.
Yeah. Well, and my wife was bemoaning the fact she's an educator and she has done some booking. She's written a book and she's done some things online. And then she asked me one time about one of my reviews and how many people had seen it. And I was just randomly picked one. And I said, well, it looks like it's about 80,000, 85,000 people have looked at it. And she just went nuts. She said, how can that be? You're doing something on an airplane that 80,000 people. I said, well, in this one here, there's a guy from Australia that commented on it. Here's a guy from England that's got a problem with it. And I replied to that. Where are you going to get worldwide exposure like that and response? It just, I don't know where you could do it.
The other thing I would say about you is not only are you doing something you love and building a plane, but you, at the end of the day, are helping 80,000 people. 80,000 people care. 80,000 people have questions, and you're answering them in this review. So that's got to feel good too.
Absolutely. And, even you were talking about the forums, like every single day, I'm subscribed to several different forums and I'll get a notification that there's something's been posted in the forum. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't get some sort of a notification. So yes, forums are valid. Yes, people are posting on them every single day. And it's always interesting. I mean, you always learn something new, especially if you're looking at a specific receiver, a type of radio, somebody's got a question about
Right.
sequencing something, somebody's got a special mix they want to use. Where else are you going to get that kind of info?
in depth. The other thing I do on a daily basis is hunt for new information, new products, and I consider myself sort of a RC news person, and I hopefully provide updated news, sales, and all kinds of information out there just for the hobby. And that's another thing, there's tons of information that you can access out there, but it's everywhere. You know, how would you track it? How would you go to one place and find all that information?
It'd be difficult. It would be difficult. So I think we've got a good thing going. We need to keep it going. And I'm enjoying doing this so much. I enjoy the airplanes. As a kid, I was one of those. If you'd hear an airplane go by, I'd be looking up in the sky. Where's that coming from? And I still do it to this very day.
Right. Yes.
I'm blessed to live by a EAA airport, airstrip, private strip. So there's always something cool going in and out of there. I'll hear the noise. There's always an RV or some sort of home built coming in and out. So it's just all aviation. Just still fascinates me.
With that said, we're clicking in on 30 minutes. And I would say if you're a manufacturer, you happen to be watching this and you're like, I would love for Mike McDougal to review my plane. You can shoot me a PM on rcgroups.com and we can see if that's an option for you. And Mike will be back with us. There's all kinds of things we could talk about. We could do a whole section just on crazy RC stories and all the other things that you know about.
Well, and it'd be fun. I'd love to do it. Just we'll set a date.
Awesome. Well, everyone, we've spent some time with Mike McDougal from RC Groups and telling stories and talking about. I got on a little rant there. I apologize, but I feel strongly about it. Mike, thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thank you, Jim. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jim T. Graham, RC Groups. Hit the subscribe button next time you can check it out right as it comes out. Bye.